তাহলে আমরা বিআইজিডির টং কনভারসেশন বা টং আলাপটা শুরু করছি। চায়ের টং যেরকম হয় আর কি, টঙের মধ্যে আমরা লোকজন বসে আলাপ আলোচনা করি, ঝগড়া বিবাদ করি। ঝগড়া বিবাদ করবো কিনা জানি না, আলাপ আলোচনাটা আসলে করি। যেটা নিয়ে হচ্ছে কি আমরা কথা বলছি সেটা হচ্ছে যে 2008 পরবর্তী সময়ে, পরবর্তী যে 16 বছর, এই সময়টাতে একটা কর্তৃত্ববাদী শাসনের বিস্তার আমরা দেখেছি। ফ্যাসিবাদী বলি বা যাই বলি, যেই নামেই হচ্ছে গিয়ে বলি না কেন। এবং আমার মনে হয় শেষের দিকে আমরা বলেছি যে সরকারটা ক্রমাগত শক্তিশালী হচ্ছে, একটা ওই যে অথরিটারিয়ান রেজিলিয়েন্স বলি, সেই রেজিলিয়েন্সটা বাড়ছে। আমরা এই রেজিলিয়েন্সটা কিভাবে তৈরি হলো সেটা নিয়ে কথা বলবো। এই রেজিলিয়েন্সটা থেকে আমরা কিভাবে 2024 সালের জুলাই আগস্ট বা জুলাই বিপ্লব এই জায়গাটা আসলাম, উইকনেসটা কোথায় দেখা গিয়েছিল, কিভাবে এখানে পৌঁছালাম সেটা নিয়ে কথা বলবো। আর তারপরে ভবিষ্যৎ নিয়ে কথা বলবো, যে এই আন্দোলনের পরবর্তীতে বাংলাদেশের গণতন্ত্রের ভবিষ্যৎটা কোথায়, কি কি করা যেতে পারে। আমি আসিফ শাহান, আমি ঢাকা বিশ্ববিদ্যালয় উন্নয়ন অধ্যয়ন বিভাগের সহযোগী অধ্যাপক আর ব্র্যাক ইনস্টিটিউট অফ গভর্নেন্স এন্ড ডেভেলপমেন্টে ভিজিটিং রিসার্চ ফেলো হিসেবে আছি। আমার সাথে আরো আছেন।
আমি মির্জা হাসান, আমি ব্র্যাক ইনস্টিটিউট অফ গভর্নেন্স এন্ড ডেভেলপমেন্টে আছি, আমি সিনিয়র রিসার্চ ফেলো। এটা শাসন ব্যবস্থা নিয়ে কাজ করি।
আর আমার নাম তারেক আলী, আমি ইতিহাস পড়াই আমেরিকাতে জর্জটাউন বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ে।
আর অনলাইনে আমাদের সাথে যুক্ত আছেন
Naomi Hossain at SOAS, University of London. I teach and research politics of development.
ঠিক আছে, তাহলে আলোচনাটা আমরা শুরু করি যে জায়গাটা নিয়ে কথা বলছিলাম। মির্জা ভাই, আমরা তো অনেকগুলো স্টাডি করেছি, যেখানে আমরা অনেক সময় হচ্ছে গিয়ে সরকারের পারফরমেন্স, লেজিটিমেসি এগুলো নিয়ে কথা বলেছি, সরকারের জনপ্রিয়তার বাড়া কমা এগুলো নিয়ে কথা বলেছি। এবং সরকার বিশেষ করে হচ্ছে গিয়ে নির্বাচনের সময় 2024 জানুয়ারিতে যে নির্বাচন হলো, সেই নির্বাচনের আগে এবং পরে সরকার যেভাবে বিষয়টাকে সামলালো, একটা নির্বাচন করে নিয়ে আসলো, আমাদের তো একটা ধারণা ছিল যে হচ্ছে গিয়ে সরকারটা অনেক বেশি রেজিলিয়েন্ট। এই রেজিলিয়েন্সটা কিভাবে ওভার দ্য ইয়ার্স আসলো মনে হয়? এটা তো শুধুমাত্র 2024 নির্বাচন না, 2014 নির্বাচনে সরকার পার করেছে, 2018 যে নির্বাচন কোট আনকোট বলছি কারণ এই নির্বাচন নিয়ে তো প্রশ্ন আছে। তারপরে এই যে এই সরকারকে ফালানো যাবে না, এই সরকার প্রচন্ড শক্তিশালী, এই ধারণাটা কিভাবে আসলো বা কিভাবে এসে হলো? এটা কি শুধুমাত্র ইকোনমিক গ্রোথ যেটা সেটার সাথে সম্পর্কযুক্ত? এটা হচ্ছে গিয়ে সরকার পাওয়ার সেন্ট্রালাইজ করেছে যেভাবে সেটার সাথে সম্পর্কযুক্ত? জনগণকে ম্যানেজ করেছে কিভাবে সেটার সাথে সম্পর্কযুক্ত? এই সম্পর্কটা আপনাকে দিয়ে যদি আগে শুরু করি, বাকিরা তো আমরা যে কোনো সময় জানতাম।
আসিফ, আপনি যা বললেন তার সবগুলোই সত্য। একটা মাল্টিপল ফ্যাক্টর ডেফিনেটলি কাজ করেছে এখানে। আমরা ডেফিনেটলি বলতে পারি যে লিডারশিপ, আমাদের এটা তো একটা পার্সোনালিস্ট একটা ব্যাপার ছিল, একটা ব্যক্তি কেন্দ্রিক একটা শাসন ব্যবস্থা ডিফ্যাক্টো দাঁড়িয়ে গেছিল। তো সেই ব্যক্তির সাহস, সেই ব্যক্তির রেকলেসনেস, সেই ব্যক্তির নিজের উপর কনফিডেন্স এবং রুথলেসনেস, এগুলো তো ডেফিনেটলি কাজ করেছে। তারপরেও কিছু জিনিস কাজ করেছে, সেটা হচ্ছে যে কথাগুলো এলো যে অর্থনীতির ব্যাপার। সেটা আমরা যে সমস্ত জরিপ করতাম আগে, আমরা দেখতাম যে সাধারণ মানুষ, নিম্নবিত্ত মানুষ, গ্রামের মানুষ, তারা বেশি তাদের কাছে যে ডিমান্ডটা, যে আমরা কি চাই রাষ্ট্রের কাছে, অথবা রাষ্ট্র সঠিকভাবে যাচ্ছে কিনা অর্থনৈতিক ভাবে, রাজনৈতিক ভাবে, সেখানে আমরা দেখেছি যে একটা মোটামুটি ভাবে, এবং 2019 পর্যন্ত দেখেছি একটা মোটামুটি ভাবে একটা গ্রহণযোগ্যতা ছিল, অর্থনীতিতে ভালো গ্রহণযোগ্যতা ছিল। আর পলিটিক্সে কম ছিল, কিন্তু এমনটা নয় যে খুব সংকট সৃষ্টি করবে ফর দ্য রেজিম, সেটাও ছিল না। তো সেটা দেখে আমরা ভাবছিলাম যে বাংলাদেশের সংখ্যাগরিষ্ঠ মানুষ, খেটে খাওয়া মানুষ, তারা গণতন্ত্র নিয়ে, হিউম্যান রাইটস নিয়ে অত চিন্তিত না। খাওয়া পড়া পেলে, জিনিসের দাম কম হলে তারা এই সরকারের বিরুদ্ধে যাবে না, সরকারের রাজনৈতিক চরিত্র যাই করবে, এমনটা ধারণা আমরা যারা গবেষক তারা করেছিলাম। কিন্তু পরের দিকে আমরা ক্রমান্বয়ে দেখতে পেলাম, আমাদের পরবর্তী সার্ভেতে 2022 এসে দেখলাম যে জিনিসের দাম বেড়ে গেছে অর্থনৈতিক ভাবে।
বাট মির্জা ভাই, এখানে যদি একটু ইস্যু করি, এই সময় তো হচ্ছে গিয়ে, তারপরে আপনার কাছেও এই সময় তো হচ্ছে গিয়ে আন্দোলন করেছে বিরোধী দলগুলো তো করেছে, এবং সেখানে যে একদমই শেষের দিকে জনসমাগম তো হয়েছে, কিন্তু সেটা কেন একদম এই গণতান্ত্রিক আন্দোলনের দিকে গেল না, সরকার পতনের দিকে কেন যায়নি? এবং বা সরকার যদি বলি যে খুব চরমভাবে দমন করতে পেরেছে, এত সাকসেসফুলি দমন করতে পারলো কেন?
আমি কি এটা বলবো না, তারেক তুমি বলতে চাও?
আমার মনে হয় মানে
But I want to hear Naomi actually on this as well.
একটা জিনিস বলতে চাই, আপনি বলেছেন যে জনগণদের ম্যানেজ করার কি মানে কত ভালো ভাবে করেছে আওয়ামী লীগ। I just want to say one thing about that. আমরা জানি যে যেহেতু আমরা মধ্যবিত্ত শ্রেণীর লোক, মানে আমরা জানি না আসলে গ্রাম অঞ্চলের লোক কিভাবে নিয়েছে, কিভাবে পেয়েছে, মানে কি ধরনের সেবা পেয়েছে, কি ধরনের যোগাযোগ, মানে what are the communication strategies. আমরা জানি আমাদের গবেষণা থেকে যে ডিজিটালাইজেশন,
ডিজিটাল সার্ভিস ডেলিভারির যে ব্যাপারটা
অনেক ডাইরেক্টলি কিন্তু শেখ হাসিনা থেকে জনগণদের কাছে কোনো মেসেজ যেত, কোনো সেবা যেত। আর আমি এখনো জানি না আসলে যে মানে সাধারণ লোক, রুরাল people, how they have seen this revolution, how they have experienced this overthrow of the Awami League, because I still think Mirza bhai যেটা বলেছেন যে আমরা যখন জরিপ করেছি আমরা দেখেছি যে কোনো একটা ট্রাস্ট ছিল আসলে until the time that the prices started to rise after the Ukraine crisis, তাই না? ওটা পর্যন্ত কিন্তু কোনো একটা ট্রাস্ট ছিল। So I still think there is a question actually that how much resilience there might be in the rural areas in terms of trust for the Awami League. এখনো এটা প্রশ্ন, তাই না? আপনারা জানেন কি উত্তর?
এই মুহূর্তে এখন পোস্ট রেভলিউশন সিচুয়েশন, political legitimacy of this interim regime এই সরকারের একদম shot up, একদম উপর দিকে চলে গেছে। হ্যাঁ, big jump, very big jump, about 32%.
সাধারণ লোকদের মধ্যে
আমি সবার
আমি যেটা দেখলাম ওদের রেজাল্ট, no difference between age groups and no difference between genders.
Rural and urban সাথে, হ্যাঁ,
and no difference between classes, social classes.
No, ওটা তো মাপে নি তারা।
না, আমি এটা ইনকাম আছে
but ওটা তো দেখিয়েছি
ওটা বোধহয় আমরা অ্যাড করিনি বা করা হয়েছে কিনা।
ইনকাম ওয়াইজ আমরা কোনো সিরিয়াস ডিফারেন্সেস
আচ্ছা
in terms of legitimacy of the current regime.
The reason I say this is that we know that the Awami League is historically a party with a strong rural base. Rich rural peasants is where they started back in the 50s, 60s. So I think this remains a question. Do they still have a support base there? But that's going forward. But going back again to your question about the resilience, authoritarian resilience, I think that is one of the stories, is a quite a successful outreach strategy, a way of communicating to say, actually, we are with you. We're there for you. We're supporting you. Whether it was true or not, we know that that feeling of security, that someone is there, someone is reaching out to me, someone is sending me goods and services and messages.
I do have a question though. Was it the Awami League strategy or was it the general growth in the economy? Was Awami League actually good at getting out the word, or was it people were going through a general sense of rising living standards, which translated into a general sense of well-being, not necessarily strong support for the Awami League, but certainly a not willingness to stand up against the regime?
Acquiescence ki Bangladesh?
Acceptance, মেনে নেওয়া বনাম সমর্থন করা.
Some degree of legitimacy was certainly there because people were not going through hard times, for sure. And then, as Shahan said, especially price of food and energy, when that shot up, we saw that already. We could see in the data, I think, that there was less support. This we know. Legitimacy is, when times are good, people are not that bothered. And times are not good.
কিন্তু আমার যেটা হলো যে আমরা যেটা পারফরম্যান্স লেজিটিমেসি কথা বলি, আমরা যারা এই নিয়ে কাজ করেছি সোশ্যাল সায়েন্টিস্ট, আমরা বলেছি যে পারফরম্যান্স লেজিটিমেসি, লাইক চায়না, লাইক ক্যাম্বোডিয়া, লাইক ভিয়েতনাম, ওইটার জোরে এই রেজিম টিকে ছিল। সো পিপল ইগনোর দ্য নন ডেমোক্রেটিক ডেমোক্রেটিক ডেফিসিট যেটা, performance legitimacy, so democratic legitimacy was not that important to the vast majority of the people. Maybe the middle class was alienated completely, but they were not, they were not threat to the regime. ওখানে শুধু economics থেকে political legitimacy quick transfer করা যাবে না, একটা আরেকটাকে explain করে না। এখানে যেটা আমি বললাম going back, যে it's a ব্যক্তি কেন্দ্রিক, it's a personalist rule predominantly, সেখানে যিনি ছিলেন তার ruthlessness, Sheikh Hasina, the former prime minister, তার ruthlessness, তার overconfidence, এগুলো কাজ করেছে, এগুলো ধরে রাখতে পেরেছে the regime কে strongly. এখন প্রবলেম হচ্ছে for us, then what happened?
happened এর আগে একটু আমি তারিক ভাই যে কথাটা বললেন, আমি একটু ওই জায়গায় ব্যাক করতে চাই যে একটা
শুনতে পাচ্ছেন আপনাকে,
এখন শুনতে পাচ্ছেন আপা? এখন শোনা যাচ্ছে?
এখন একটু মাফল।
আমার মনে হয় একটা ডিস্টিংশন করা দরকার যে আমি সমর্থন করছি আর আমি এটাকে মেনে নিচ্ছি। আমার মনে হয় যে
কি বলছেন,
হ্যাঁ, মানে ইকোনমিক গ্রোথের ব্যাপারটা না, যে আমাদের যে সোশ্যাল সেফটি নেট যেগুলো আছে, ভিজিটি কার্ড গুলো গরিবের কাছে যাচ্ছে, হয়তো সেটা আওয়ামী লীগের গরিব, মানে কনসিডারিং দ্যাট, হয়তো হচ্ছে গিয়ে কিছু ভাতা যাচ্ছে, এটা যাচ্ছে, এটার মাধ্যমে যে আমি আওয়ামী লীগের সমর্থন হয়ে যাচ্ছি জানা, কিন্তু আমি আন্দোলন করতে যাব সেই ইচ্ছাটাকে এটা হচ্ছে গিয়ে চাপা দিয়ে রাখছি। এটা যে আমরা বলতে পারছি যে আওয়ামী লীগকে ভোট দিবে বা আওয়ামী লীগের সমর্থক, কিন্তু এরা ওই যে রাস্তায় নামা। আরো মির্জা ভাই যেটাকে নেগেটিভ লিবার্টি এন্ড পজিটিভ লিবার্টির সাথে বলে, যে যতক্ষণ পর্যন্ত আমার এই পজিটিভ লিবার্টির আশাটা একটু হলেও ফুলফিল হচ্ছিল, ততক্ষণ পর্যন্ত আমার হচ্ছে গিয়ে রাস্তায় নামার বা আন্দোলন করার বা হচ্ছে গিয়ে সে করার মোটিভেশনটা ছিল না।
আমার কাছে ওটা মনে হয় ভেরি মাচ কনভিন্সিং, অ্যাজ মানে আপনি যে বলেন সমর্থন, অ্যাকুইয়েসেন্স এন্ড সাপোর্টের মধ্যে বিশাল পার্থক্য। বাট আই অলসো হ্যাভ আ কোয়েশ্চেন সবার জন্যই, এইবার আওয়ামী লীগ মানে যে ধরনের মাস মার্ডারের মধ্যে গেল, the way they spectacularly lost all legitimacy, did they commit incidents? Now we're hearing about all the, I mean, we knew about Ayaghor. We knew there was a Shapla Chattor massacre. We knew these things. It's not that we didn't know, but it did not translate into a moral crisis for the regime in the same way. And I think that's worth thinking about. Is that purely because of the economy was good, or is there more to it than তখন ইকোনমি ভালো ছিল, খারাপ কাজ করলেও আমরা মেনে নিয়েছি, এখন ইকোনমি খারাপ কাজ করেছে আমরা পারিনি, এত সহজ?
এখন আমি একটু বলতে চাই, you know, and Tariq and I, we've worked on this issue of the moral economy before, so we know that, you know, people can take a lot. As you say, the difference between acquiescence and support is important. Usually you have to have some kind of trigger for the acquiescence to go. And in this case, you often it's an outrageous act of corruption, which there were many, but this was not what happened here. What happened here, I think, was the absolute shock of seeing the army and the police shooting young people dead in the street. The absolute horror of seeing Abu Saeed shot dead. I was sitting in London and I was phoning up all my friends in Dhaka at the time, in Bangladesh. And these are people who have faced really the worst of the Awami League regime, people who have been disappeared, who have been arrested, who have beaten up, seen their colleagues killed. I'm talking about labor leaders as well here. And these people were in shock. If they were in shock, what about the rest of the society who had never experienced any of this themselves? So there was a real absolute moral repugnance and a horror. And I'm talking also about people that I know who are very supportive of Awami League, very supportive, close friends of people at the very top. And they were in shock and they were horrified that they were in some way associated with this absolutely terrible violence against young people. That was the trigger. That's when it all starts to go.
Right. But to come back to my question was, why weren't previous horrors as triggering?
Like which one?
Shapla, let's go with Shapla Chattor. We could go with Ayaghor. We could go with Rana Plaza, which, I mean, I'm sure Awami League is not responsible for it, but they're responsible for the mismanagement of it, for the lack of distribution of the
Pilkhana.
The Pilkhana massacre. We can go through a lot.
Is there a class dimension?
I'm asking. I think there is.
I think there is. You know, somebody in one webinar said, It's when they started beating up the women students. When they started beating the women, this was the end. I think it was Sohaila Nazneen. She said that was the turning point. When they start beating the women, then it's that loses its moral legitimacy. And my point was that they've been beating up the garments workers for decades. Nobody cares about that.
Yes, yes, yes.
না, আমি একটু এখানে আরেকটা ডিসটিংশন করব, মানে যখন শাপলা চত্বরের ঘটনা আসে বা আয়না ঘরের যে ইস্যুগুলো শুনছি, এইটার একটা জাস্টিফিকেশন কি এরকম হতে পারে যে একটা কাইন্ড অফ আস ভার্সেস দেম ন্যারেটিভ, যে মানে মুক্তিযুদ্ধের পক্ষের শক্তি আপনি মারতেছেন হচ্ছে গিয়ে কাইন্ড অফ মুক্তিযুদ্ধের বিপক্ষের শক্তিকে, সো একটা লেজিটিমেসিতে আছে, ঠিক আছে, যে জিনিসটা শাহবাগের পরে খানিকটা হলেও তৈরি হয়েছিল, আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে জামাত এসে এদেরকে মারাই যেতে পারে, এদের এসে নিয়ে কিছু নাই, এইটা পিলখানার ক্ষেত্রে খাটবে না, কিন্তু শাপলা চত্বরের ক্ষেত্রে বা পরবর্তীতে যাদের ধরে নেওয়া হচ্ছে, জেলে ঢুকানো হচ্ছে, তাদের ক্ষেত্রে এইটা এই জিনিসটা যে ওরা আসলে আমাদের লোক না, ওরা বাংলাদেশ পছন্দ করে না, ওরা এসে করতে পারে না, যে ন্যারেটিভটা তৈরি করা হয়েছিল সেটার একটা সাকসেস এইটা কিনা। কারণ এই সাকসেসটা কিন্তু এখানে ভেঙে গেছে, যে যখন এই ঘটনাটা ঘটলো তখন কিন্তু এই আস ভার্সেস দেমের সেটা নাই, যে তখন হচ্ছে এই ছাত্র জনতা বা ছাত্র জনতা যাই বলি না কেন, এখানে কিন্তু আপনি ওই জামাত বিএনপি এইভাবে আলাদা করতে পারতেছেন, এবং প্রবাবলি দ্যাট ইজ ওয়াই এভরিওয়ান কাইন্ড অফ দ্যাট উই আর কানেক্টেড টু দিস পিপল। আমি জানি না সেটা একটা,
এটা তো মানে এখানে একটা ক্যাসকেড অফ ইভেন্টস এর ব্যাপার আছে, এটা তো বুঝতে হবে, একটা সিকোয়েন্সিং আছে। শুরু হয়েছিল ব্রেড এন্ড বাটার, কোটা তো ব্রেড এন্ড বাটার, হ্যাঁ, পজিটিভ লিবারেটি বলি আর যাই বলি, তো সেটা একটা the former prime minister made a tactical error because of our highly inflated ego whatever, ওটা থেকে একটা, এবং তখনই শুরু হয়েছে যে the trust, the erosion of trust, and legitimacy, and people were fed up, this is too much, doing this and so on. তারপরে I think ওই যখন large scale কিলিংটা শুরু হয়ে গেল, তখন the জনতা, the masses, the working poor, the urban poor, they started showing solidarity. এবং একটা মাদ্রাসা স্টুডেন্ট বলছে যে আমি তো বিসিএস টিসিএস যাব না, আই থিঙ্ক প্রবাবলি ফ্রম কোমি, the one that we saw the interview, তার কিন্তু কোনো স্টেক নাই ইন কোটা ইন দ্য বিসিএস। সে বলছে আমার ভাইকে মেরে ফেলবে, আমি আমার মুসলমান ভাই সেটাও বলেছে যে আমার মুসলমান ভাইকে মেরে ফেলছে, আমি তো বসে থাকতে পারি না। সো দেয়ার আর সো মেনি রিজনস ফর সলিডারিটি। রিক্সা চালক এসছে, তার যে মোরাল ইকোনমি, তার যে সেন্স অফ জাস্টিস, সেটাও সে মনে করছে ভায়োলেটেড হচ্ছে। এই বাচ্চা ছেলেগুলো লেখাপড়া করছে, অনেকে তো গরিব মানুষেরও ছেলে, এবং তাদের একটা স্বপ্ন তার ছেলে বড় হয়ে সরকারি চাকুরি হবে, তাকে মেরে ফেললো, হ্যাঁ, জাস্ট সে চাকুরির একটা মেরিটোক্রেটিক ডিমান্ড করছিল বলে। ওই লেভেলটা শেষ পর্যন্ত এমন একটা জায়গায় নিয়ে গেছিল, দ্য পয়েন্ট অফ নো রিটার্ন ফর দ্য রেজিম, অ্যান্ড পিপল আর উইলিং টু বি কিল্ড। আর যখন মানুষ ভয় পায় না মরতে, তখন থিংস আর ডিফারেন্ট, কমপ্লিটলি ডিফারেন্ট। তখন ওই র্যাশনাল চয়েস লজিক গুলো কাজ করে না, তখন ইমোশনস এন্ড লট অফ থিংস ওয়ার্ক টুগেদার।
আপনি তো এটা নিয়ে কাজ করতেছেন,
চেষ্টা করছি আর কি একটা কাজ করার, বাট আই মিন আপনারা যে প্রশ্ন করেছিলেন, মানে জাস্ট টু গো ব্যাক টু দ্য রেজিলিয়েন্স অফ দ্য পাস্ট রেজিম, economic resilience, which we performance legitimacy. There is perhaps a political systemic resilience, a centralized party with power concentrated in the person itself. কিন্তু আপনি যে রেজিলিয়েন্সের কথা বলছেন শাহান ভাই, ওটা হচ্ছে an ideological resilience, a resilience based off of a language of 71 and distinguishing muktijoddhas and razakars. And this is a very much, I think, I mean, it seems to me, the turning point, the beating of the girls happened because the students exposed the ideology to be empty. They exposed the ideology to be completely fake and made up.
Yeah.
And self-interested and nakedly self-interested without any actual historical substance. My question is, did we all always know this ideology to be naked and false, just didn't have the guts to call it? And the students, or did the students actually lift the cobwebs from our eyes with the chant? Did most of us know that these are empty terms, or were we actually living in this fake world of made up muktijoddhas and razakars?
I mean, I'm not sure I entirely agree with you, Tariq, because it's not that there is no nationalism in the student movement. It's not that It's not that
No,
the
no,
movement itself was not a nationalist movement.
let
It
me
was-
clarify. I'm not saying the students are anti-nationalist by any stretch. I
but
mean,
they're
not
also
nearly.
still using the symbols of the liberation war. But
The
they've
symbols of
taken
the-
them from they've taken them from the Awami League now. It no longer belongs to the Awami League.
But the
That is
Awami
the
League had no, absolutely. I'm not saying that they reject the liberation war. I'm not saying that
They used it actively.
I am not
used
saying
it.
they actively used Mujib's 7th March speech in the movement. I agree with all of that. But they do have an analysis of how Awami League rule worked, and they showed us through a chant how it worked. They revealed when they said "Tu mike amike Rajakar Rajakar," all of us had to look around and said, "You too, me too," right? I mean, we had to kind of we had this. Did we not know that Awami League was doing this to us? Were we blinded to it? Did it require that chant for us to realize it?
It was very
Or did
selective.
we make a Faustian bargain with ourselves where
It's
we
very
decided
I think that's the
we made a
appropriate word.
Faustian
It
bargain?
was a Faustian bargain because people knew, all middle class that I know of, they knew this is just a strategic slogan. It's a partisan slogan, Mukti Juddha Chetona. Okay, no one bought it. I mean, it wasn't, it wasn't something. No, people had to use it. People had to go for Faustian bargain with it, but no one believed in it, other than some die-hard partisan people.
There were diehard partisan people.
They bought, yeah. But they're the minority. They are not the masses.
No, we're not saying the masses. This is not.
I'm talking even a larger middle class. Even they knew it's another strategic maneuver on the part of the regime.
I think.
Yeah, Anyway,
Yes,
maybe.
Naomi.
I don't know. I still think it's very appealing. It's emotionally appealing still. We fought this amazing war of liberation, this struggle that nobody believed we could win. And regardless of whoever's face is, in the memorials and so on, it's something that a nation is justifiably proud of, I think. And I think that, for the older generation, there's a real kind of connection. The older, a connection to that whole Mukti Juddha Chetona ideology. The younger generation, though, it is appealing. It's seductive. It's glamorous.
I know. But
So I guess,
that's
Naomi, let me clarify.
No,
Is
that's
there a
the
difference?
authentic Mukti Juddha Chetona you're talking about. But the strategic use by the Awami League as a political party was very clear.
What is authentic?
People had no illusion about it.
No, sure, but it doesn't make the ideology itself or the imagery, the nationalist imagery, the liberation war imagery less appealing. It does make it less appealing. Yes, it does, but it doesn't remove it entirely. I
Yeah.
think.
আপনি যে authentic মুক্তিযুদ্ধের চেতনা বলছেন, মানে how do you
আপনাকে
define
শুনতে পাচ্ছি না, শান।
এই যে authentic মুক্তিযুদ্ধের চেতনা বলছেন,
Hmm.
what is this authentic মুক্তিযুদ্ধের চেতনা?
As different from the fake
strategic
one.
use of মুক্তিযুদ্ধের চেতনা we can get, but
No,
authentic-
authentic that we believe. I mean, majority of the people in Bangladesh, they believe their respect for the 71 liberation war.
ওইভাবেই সেটা।
সেভাবে আর কি
Okay,
সেদিক থেকে হ্যাঁ I mean-
Resilience,
হ্যাঁ
authoritarian resilience is the strategic use of Mukti Juddha Chetona critical to authoritarian resilience? Is my question.
I don't think
to
so.
me
It
to me it wasn't potent enough to for the resilience. No. No.
I mean, I think আমার কাছে ড্রাইভিং লাইনটা হচ্ছে গিয়ে ওই আজ ভার্সেস দেন ন্যারেটিভটা আমি তৈরি করতে পারতেছি না। যদি ওই অথেন্টিক মুক্তিযুদ্ধের চেতনা, সরি হিসেবে বলতেছে, বাট এই যে মুক্তিযুদ্ধ বা এটার প্রতি যে শ্রদ্ধা বা যেটা, যে যদি সেটা আজ ভার্সেস দেন ন্যারেটিভটা না তৈরি করতে পারে, ততক্ষণ পর্যন্ত আপনি এটা বলতে পারেন। বাট স্ট্র্যাটেজিক ইউজে গেলে এই ডিফারেন্সটা তৈরি করাটা হচ্ছে সিগনিফিকেন্ট। আমি জাস্ট মানে জিনিস আমার কাছে মনে হয় যে এই মুভমেন্টের দুইটা খুব ক্রিটিক্যাল ঘটনা। এটা আমার একটা হচ্ছে যে তুমি কে আমি কে রাজাকার যেটা বলা হচ্ছে, এইটা এই আজ ভার্সেস দেন যে ন্যারেটিভ, এটাতে একটা বড় আঘাত। যে বেসিক্যালি হচ্ছে ইটস নট আজ ভার্সেস দেন। সেকেন্ড আরেকটা জিনিস যে আমার মনে হয় আমাদের সবার মধ্যে একটা ভয় ছিল যে এই রেজিমের বিরুদ্ধে আমরা দাঁড়াতে পারবো কিনা বা সাহস আছে কিনা। আবু সাইদের মৃত্যুটা শুধু না, আবু সাইদ যেভাবে দাঁড়িয়ে গিয়েছিল যে দুই হাত তুলে, দ্যাট ইউ ক্যান শুট মি এন্ড আই উইল স্ট্যান্ড still, that image I think has actually influenced a lot of people, that we can actually let's die for this,
Exactly.
but we will do that.
Fear was the big
I
thing.
think he stood there thinking they would never shoot him.
No, I mean that's what he thought, but I mean the way when I saw it, when people saw it, ওরা তো দেখতেছে হচ্ছে কি you can actually মানে দাঁড়াতে পারেন, মানে আমার যেটা মনে হয়েছে আর কি।
না যে লোকজন দাঁড়ানো এই যে টু ডিফাই ডেথ,
হ্যাঁ।
এটা কিন্তু দাঁড়িয়ে গেছিল ভেরি স্ট্রংলি, এবং পুলিশ ওয়ার প্যানিকড বাই ইট। দেয়ার ইজ এ ভিডিও অন দ্যাট, যে স্যার আমি একটা মারি বাকিগুলো যায় না,
হ্যাঁ।
দাঁড়ায় থাকে। এটা তো খুব আতঙ্কের বিষয়। হ্যাঁ, একদম ক্লিয়ারলি দ্যাট সামস আপ অ্যাকচুয়ালি, যে পিপল ওয়ার উইলিং টু ডাই, এন্ড তখনই রেজিমের একটা বিরাট রকম একটা ইয়ে হয়ে গেছিল আর কি, যে ফিয়ারটা তখন কমপ্লিটলি চলে গেছে মানুষের ভেতর থেকে। পিপল ওয়ার ইন দ্য স্ট্রিট, দ্য আরবান পুয়ার, দ্য স্টুডেন্টস, দে আর উইলিং টু ডাই। The women students, the young women, they were there, taking all kinds of risks.
Amazing.
শুনতে পাচ্ছ না?
হ্যাঁ,
Okay, I think the one of the biggest reasons for Australian resilience is fear.
না
But that fear was not at
আরেকটা
that point.
আরেকটা সেটা হলো যে geopolitics. And what kind of setting was Bangladesh in? Now you have to think about, I'm thinking now, with a long sweep, Tariq can help us out here. You go back to the 70s and onwards, Bangladesh was very dependent on Western aid and on Western goodwill, actually. That changed, I don't know when, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe even longer. No longer that dependent on Western aid. We saw the proof of that in the 2024 election, when the Americans tried to suggest they would sanction people who opposed the free and fair elections, and actually it had no effect. So you have a changing geopolitical situation. You have a much more reliance on China, and to some extent on India, but much more reliance on China for finance and for general support. And China doesn't care if you have democracy and civil and political rights, right? So this is an important part of the authoritarian resilience story for Bangladesh. Bangladesh remains a very open economy, a very, really quite relatively powerless political entity in the world system, very dependent on its international relations. Those international relations have changed. I think that's the real source probably of the authoritarian resilience.
Yes.
Sorry, আমি এইসব বাংলাতে বলতে পারবো না।
না ঠিক আছে। জিওপলিটিক্যাল না বাংলাদেশ, মানে the way former prime minister managed to have good relationship with China, with India, with US, Russia, that is unique. I think this is unique in the world. আর কেউ পেরেছে কিনা আমি জানি না, but she was
Trump is a talented politician in that sense.
Yeah,
very good at getting power and holding on to it.
Yes, এটা তো মানতে হবে, plus recklessness.
Absolutely.
দুটোই ওনার ভেতর কাজ করতো।
Recklessness comes with arrogance.
সেটা ডেফিনেটলি করেছে। Yeah, Tariq, you want to say something?
I'm just saying that, and of course, it's the foreign relations and her ability to balance great powers was indeed a source of her resilience. One of the things that preceded her collapse was the falling apart of this, what she had brought together, right? We've all heard which preceded the press conference.
But that didn't trigger.
But but I guess she was facing a polycrisis. She was facing a polycrisis in the moments before the movement began.
That's right.
Even before the movement began, with economic collapse, dwindling reserves, China behaving more aggressively, India not being as giving as it used to be. There were multiple polycrises that she was under, even before the quota reform.
Sure.
তার মানে কি, does that mean that যদি এই ইকোনমিক ক্রাইসিস বা এগুলো যদি না হতো, would she have handled this thing better? আমরা কি সেটা ইচ্ছা করছি নাকি is this something that even if there was kind of এই polycrisis যেগুলো আমরা বলছি সেটা না হলেও this could have happened?
এইটা যদি না হতো অন্য কিছু, মানে যে কোনো একটা ঘটনা, any other trigger would have worked.
Let me ask that question.
But any trigger would have worked at this point, whereas no trigger would have worked 10 years back.
Right.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Any trigger now would have succeeded, but 10 years back, she could have done the worst things and would have probably gotten away with it.
You know what we say in political sociology, the political opportunity structure.
Right.
I think that's what we have to think about here. What was the political opportunity for challengers to power? And also, and moving to this question of, you know, how did this movement get so big and so threatening to this powerful, resilient regime? I think the question, it remains to me something of a puzzle, which I'm hoping Mirza Bhai and those of you who are engaging with the student movement leaders will be able to answer, which is, you know, rarely in all of the many protest movements that I have studied around the world, rarely do you see something very spontaneous, without a powerful, either usually a labor or leftist organization or a political opposition backing it, get so successful. Very rare for protest movements to be genuinely spontaneous, genuinely bringing in people from across society. And from what I've seen so far, from the data I've seen, from everything I've heard and spoken to, actually seems that this was the case in Bangladesh, that this was actually relatively spontaneous.
Probably first time in the history of Bangladesh, yes. Non-partisan upsurge.
Not partisan, no major organizational backing seems to have been present. Maybe history will show another story, but so far that's what we know. That is remarkable. That is a puzzle for me.
Absolutely.
So I guess, I mean, I think I was totally spontaneous. I mean, we've been having conversations with urban poor people in Jatrabari who participate in the movement. And there's certain quotes I get of and they describe their protest as spontaneous. They describe their protest, Amra kuna banner e namini. Amra chhatroder
সমর্থন, exactly.
Kuna banner e namini. And I think what I find interesting about the non-student participation, the non-students, the Janota that joined with the Chhatra Janota, is that they actually didn't have any demands. They didn't join the street saying, we want democracy. They joined the street in support of, in solidarity with students. And I think that they demanded justice for the deaths, for certain. They demanded accountability, they demanded resignation, they demanded those things. But when you ask them, why were you there? I was there in support of the students. I was there in solidarity with the students. But they were actually merging themselves into something else, in my sense.
No, but why? Why did they do it?
The deaths, that's bravery.
The deaths, yes. So
why they did it. I have another great stories of why that we get over and over again is the bravery of students.
The bravery.
The quote that you've heard, and I'm sure people have heard, আমি মুক্তিযুদ্ধ দেখি নাই কিন্তু সেদিন মুক্তিযুদ্ধ দেখেছিলাম. Courage, bravery, qualities, rather than, it seems to me that the movement was not about a specific list of demands or about a vision of a future society, but about, I mean, for the students, I think there's a lot of things, but for the people who came out in support of the students, we're going to struggle to say that they came out demanding this one thing, all of them. But I think they came out in appreciation, in solidarity, in camaraderie, and the students' bravery. One Shahan Bajira Bulletin, I really liked it. When we saw bravery, we lost our fear. But when we saw their bravery, also our admiration of people who could be so brave, went through the roof.
No, exactly. And you know, I have to tell you, my old school friends from Green Herald School. One is a garments guy; he's a knitwear manufacturer, and one is a corporate lawyer. I mean, these guys, you know, drive around Gulshan in their fancy cars. They came onto the streets, and exactly, you're right. It was in solidarity. It's not like they wanted the regime to fall in particular. But they came out on the streets because they felt so strongly that if we were all together, this would protect the students and the protesters. I was very struck by that. I've never seen that in other places. Without, as you say, kono banner na. Just, you know, we are with. This is all of us are here saying, don't go around killing the students. Don't go around killing protesters. That was a remarkable moment.
Just to add to that, we remember the rickshaw চালান যে সেলুটটা যেটা দিলেন আর কি উনি যে শহীদ মিনারে দ্রোহযাত্রার দিন আর কি যারা হচ্ছে উনি সেলুটটা যেটা that salute was not necessarily the end of Hasina regime or anything. There's the admiration to the students that what you're talking about. এটা এই কারণে বললাম যে আমার কলিগ ওই দিন অনুষ্ঠান শেষে ওই রিকশাওয়ালার রিকশা হচ্ছে বাসায় গেছে, and when he reached home that rickshaw actually refused to take money. যে আমি টাকা নিব না, কেন? কারণ আপনার একটা ভালো কাজে আসছে, তো আমাকে টাকা দেওয়া লাগবে না।
No,
So, ওই সেটা।
I think the real, I mean, certainly the rich garments wallas, the Gulshan fancy car people did come on the street, which is remarkable. And I think the acts of solidarity do, I mean, the various acts of solidarity that people expressed in various ways throughout the movement all matter. But the urban poor, the urban informal sector, the rickshawala, the drivers, the hawkers, the street dweller, they gave the support of facing death.
Yes.
They fought next to the students. And that's the support that I don't think any other community offered that degree of support that the urban poor offered. Actual material aid in times of death, in times of violence, in terms of picking up the injured and taking them to the hospital, in terms of giving water, distributing free snacks and free water, risking, I mean, there are many, many stories of people being arrested and shot for giving water and snacks to protesters. The kind of, that kind of solidarity was very different from the kinds of solidarity that I participated in the same march where we took the rickshaw. To go back to the rickshaw story, when he's interviewed on TV and he's asked, he's being interviewed, he's a famous salute guy. He's being interviewed next to someone's drawn a mural of his salute. And he's saying that I gave this salute at Doel Chattor, not at the Shohid Minar salute went more viral. But the first salute I gave, which he says the mural is of, was at Doel Chattor. And they asked him, why did you give that salute? And he said, I saw blood that day. I didn't see, Mama, we didn't doctor dekhchilam. Mama, amar mukti jodha dekhi na, kintu oi din mukti jodha gechilam. And it's the bravery. He was the salute was an acknowledgement of the bravery of protesters. So the Shohid Minar salute was a rehearsed event. He was reprising an earlier gesture of solidarity that he had made a few days earlier, which I found very fascinating.
Can I ask again my old question? What do we know about what was happening in the rural areas and the small towns across the country during all of this? What do we know?
Not enough.
Well, we don't know much because it's yet to be documented. But I know one anecdote. In my own village, there are 3 or 4 colleges in 3 different villages, and my village is in the intersection. And my cousin who lives in that village, he told me there were large-scale battle between the police and the college students. That's in Kalihati, and inside Kalihati, 3 miles deep into the village. It's in Tangail. In Tangail, Kalihati, and then there are several colleges and college students, thousands of them. They came, and the police had to go to the village to fight them because they were marching towards the city, to the Kalihati Upazila city. So they had to obstruct them at one point, and there was speech battle in front of my village house.
Wow.
So maybe that has happened in many places. The one reason that it is a student, it was a predominantly student movement and youth movement, and since there are thousands of high schools, thousands of colleges, so that was a big thing, big source of rebellion, and the police had to confront. Police strength was thinned out essentially because due to that.
I think it's worth remembering that the Ershad movement was carried out by 6 public universities and no private universities in the country at the time. There were 6 public universities and no private universities when the Ershad government was overthrown by university students. 69th movement was carried out by 4 public universities and no private universities in the country. Now we have 55 public universities in like 30 or 40 districts. There's a public university in Noakhali, in Kumilla, in Rangpur, and there are public universities in places which are small towns, which are traditionally not even like the main division towns, right? District towns and universities. So I think that's one thing. The second thing is, I think I don't know if you agree with this, Naomi. Do you see the urban-rural divide as starkly as that in Bangladesh?
No, I don't.
Why?
I don't.
Why? I think most of the university students at Dhaka University who led the movement grew up in villages and go home to their villages every year, twice, 3 times. Whose parents still live in villages.
No, absolutely. But there is a class.
Same thing happened in 1952. It was the rural.
There is some class fluidity as well, I think, certainly, that it's not that, everyone going to university is from a middle class background. Sure. Maybe more so in the private universities, which are very expensive. And of course, as we know, the value of land has gone up so much. So rural people who are landed, of course, have capital, which they didn't have, in 69 or 52 or anything like that. But nonetheless, I think there is a difference, isn't there, between somebody who makes their living as a wage laborer and probably doesn't send their children to university or in a factory, and somebody who is, working in a corporation or for the government or has a business or something like that. There are differences here. And I think there's something we need to understand better. First, the resilience of the Awami League. Were they successfully reaching out to the rural areas? And secondly, what do people think about this movement now? You've got to remember, when we last looked at television viewing figures, for instance, BTV was still really capturing a huge amount of the rural audience. That's changed now, I imagine.
I would suggest that this movement, the revolution will not be televised, it will certainly be streamed on YouTube.
Absolutely, it was definitely streamed.
Or Facebook.
Yeah.
And I feel like the rural reach of those channels is pretty, it's pretty solid.
But it's an empirical question, Tariq. We need to know who was watching Jamuna TV in Nilphamari.
Speaking of Nilphamari, there's a famous video that went around of protests in Nilphamari town being led by women, with these women walking up and down in front of the police. In Nilphamari town, not in Rangpur town, in Nilphamari town.
But that's also a student, right?
It's a student in Nilphamari, a college student in Nilphamari town, leading it. So I think in a way this was not a Dhaka-centric movement. There may have been, it was a Dhaka-headquartered movement.
It's an empirical question, Tariq. We need to find out more.
But I think we do. But I think there's a lot of empirics we have, which suggests that this movement, if you look at the deaths, if you just look at the number of deaths, you'll see the places of deaths. So I mean, but if you locate who died where, you'll see an enormous distribution of deaths throughout the country. If you look at the trouble on the 4th of August, before the day, 63 out of 64 districts witnessed clashes. So I mean, this is not. I mean, 63 out of 64 districts saw clashes.
Which is the one that didn't?
That's a good question. One of the Khagrachuri, Bandarban.
I'm not sure.
Prove it.
So it's not this. The Dhaka was certainly the nerve center. Dhaka University was certainly the nerve center, as has been the case in many movements. I don't know how many of the government is this that Dhaka University students have brought down.
But don't forget the industrial workers.
Don't forget the what? Sorry?
The industrial workers. More than 100 workers have died, and the Boro je battle ফিল্ডগুলো এর মধ্যে ইন্ডাস্ট্রিয়াল জোনস আর দেয়ার নারায়ণগঞ্জ
Rampura
Gazipur Uttarao even they came and joined. So industrial workers in a very large number also part of the story.
What about
Isn't it interesting though that they came out again under no banner?
Yes.
Does that just reflect the fragmentation of the labor movement? Because my feeling about this is that, moving forward, we've had this conversation many times, Mirza, right? That without organized labor, which is genuinely representing the views and the interests of the workers, democracy is going to be very, very hard to achieve in Bangladesh.
Yes. No, that's correct. That's correct. That's what we saw, at least, in this upsurge. That the workers came without any partisan interest or anything like. They just came out of what Tariq said about the solidarity, and so.
But no organizational banner either.
No organization at all. But
just came out as individuals.
At the fag end of the movement, of course, I'm sure the Jamaat Shibir came in. I'm sure the Chhatradal came in.
Some did,
at the last moment. Also, some Islamic groups, Islamic Shashan Tantra, they came. Probably Hafazat. when when the long march, some estimates say it could be 10 to 15 lakhs of people was coming in, was converging on the last day. So those are not students, those are not only Janata, those are also political parties, those are also other groups.
I think the
Political
political
parties
parties
are not
were
part of that.
involved.
No, I mean the Chhatr Dal and
But the Janata, I mean, what I like, the Chhatra Janata as a framing is a very interesting way
Yeah.
of calling.
বাট এই ছাত্রের মধ্যে ছাত্রদল বা অন্যরা আমার ধারণা শুরু থেকেই ছিল, দে ডিড নট ওয়ান্ট টু বি
not on a large scale. যতটা শেষের দিকে according to the leaders.
The
That's what
banner,
the leaders
did
said.
they come under their banner or not?
No, not under the
I think
banner.
that's
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Chhatral person could
Not
be,
at all.
it's
But
part
I'm
of the
talking-
movement.
Yes,
But he's not holding up a
No,
thing saying,
they
"I'm
didn't. They
Chhatral."
didn't. Of course they did.
I think that's the point.
Yeah, that's the point.
That's the key
You
point.
move
Yeah.
on to the future.
তার আগে আমি আরেকটা জিনিস, একটু রেজিলিয়েন্সের একটা জিনিসের সাথে বলতে চাই যে আমরা অনেক সময় ডেমোক্রেসির ক্ষেত্রে যে কনফিডেন্স ট্র্যাপ একটা শব্দ ব্যবহার করি। So do you think that Sheikh Hasina also falls some sort of confidence trap that after 2024 নির্বাচনটা করার পরে she felt confident enough that I can deal with any kind of problems?
Yeah, but that's not democracy's confidence.
No, আমি বলতেছি যে similar kind of authoritarian কোনো confidence
Confidence.
ট্র্যাপের মধ্যে শেখ হাসিনা পড়ে গিয়েছিলেন কিনা? Something like that could have happened in 2018, 2020. I mean, the way she dealt with that, so she could have solved that problem. I mean, many are arguing that on the first day or the second day, okay, fine, I will take care of it. But she, এটার পেছনে তো হচ্ছে গিয়ে she continued provoking, right? Even after ওই appellate division রায়ের পরে ব্লক রেড করে ছাত্রদের ধরা, 6 জনকে নিয়ে ইসে করা. So she went all the way.
Remember back in 2013-14, the BNP and Jamaat put up a huge resistance against the election at that time. 2014. তখন ওইটাকে সাপ্রেস করেছে. She has nearly destroyed. I mean, এখন তো আবার দাঁড়াবে সেটা অন্য কথা. BNP marginalized করে দিয়েছে. Jamaat was gone. So she had the reason to be confident that things can be managed with repression.
So it's not a trap. It's
not a trap.
No, but she destroyed the BNP. But actually, the caretaker government did a pretty good job there too. The previous caretaker government. So when you have a two-party system and one party is defanged, has its legs cut off from beneath it, then you no longer have a two-party system. You no longer have an opposition. That's the way we started 2009, right? Is with one landslide election in the freest and fairest election Bangladesh has ever seen, and no opposition. Basically, a very weak opposition. And are we in danger of doing this again? I think we might be.
So let's talk
but
about
that's about future.
Yeah. So let's move into
Are we in the future now?
I thought
in the future now.
I think so. Yeah. We are in the future now.
Right.
So, again, যদি শুরু করি তাহলে হচ্ছে গিয়ে একদম যদি খুব জেনারেল টার্মে শুরু করি, সো আশা হচ্ছে একটা গণতান্ত্রিক রিপাবলিক বলি বা যাই বলি, একটা গণতান্ত্রিক শাসন ব্যবস্থার দিকে যাও। এই সরকার গতকালকে হচ্ছে গিয়ে কয়েকটা রিফর্ম কমিশন কতগুলো স্পেসিফিক গোল সেট করেছে। সো আর উই মুভিং ইন দ্য রাইট ডিরেকশন আর হোয়াট আর উই এক্সপেক্টিং ফ্রম দোজ রিফর্ম কমিশনস? অ্যান্ড এগেইন, সো যেটা নাওমি আপা বলছিলেন যে একটা ইলেকশন হলো, ইফ উই গেট এগেইন আ বিগ মেজরিটি, অ্যান্ড এর আগের বার যেটা হয়েছে আমরা ট্রাস্ট করেছিলাম যে দে উইল ট্রাই টু ইনস্টিল ডেমোক্রেসি, দে ডিড নট গো ডাউন দ্যাট পাথওয়ে। সেম জিনিসটা আবারও
হতে পারে।
সো ইজ দেয়ার
হতে পারে কি? আমি তো মনে করে হবেই।
Okay.
আমি মনে করি এটা হবেই, এটা নিয়ে কোনো আনসার্টেনিটি নেই, আমার কোনো কনফিউশন নেই ব্যাপারে। আমরা যদি unless we do something completely new thing,
unless in the next 18 months somebody can invent a very popular mass-based political party.
But that's one option. But for me, the thing that I visualize is not the business as usual, the representative democracy that we vote a regime in power and 5 years we sit at the gallery and look at the tournament. Then definitely it's going to be the same old game. Okay, creeping tyranny, creeping dictatorship, creeping fascism, or whatever you call it. That's going to happen. This is not only that, we are unique, we don't have, democratic culture. This is happening worldwide. I mean, representative democracy is not serving the people anywhere in the world. Okay.
Yeah.
So there is an inherent flaw in the conception of representative democracy. So we need to change our notion, our understanding, what democracy is, what really popular democracy is, popular participation is. That cannot be satisfied with our narrow understanding of electoral democracy. We need to broaden our idea.
So how do you do that?
The thing is, in the democratic sphere, we need to bring in, other than representative democracy, we have to have direct democracy. We have to have
deliberative democracy.
We need to have referendum, periodic referendums. Referendums are very important, which our constitution has. It was meaning, if we issue-based referendums. Okay. It could be, after 2 years, one referendum on some meta issues. So, I mean, this we have to design. Okay. Based on our culture, based on our experience. Yes, referendum is one. And of course, a lot of things should be mediated. Between the people and the representative, there should be other platforms or mechanisms of democracy, democratic representation. Collective representation, okay? That could be some deliberative space, deliberative forums, and so on. A lot of things. And right.
We did not see them.
No,
budget meeting,
open budget, ward sabha in the local area. আইনে আছে, আইনে তো সব আছে।
এটা তো কাজ করেনি,
কাজ করছে না,
মানে কিছুটা আছে, কিছুটা হয়। I don't know how much is ornamental.
এখন যেটা হলো যে আমি যেটা একটা বলতে চাই সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমাদেরকে এই রিফর্ম গুলো গার্ড করতে হবে। এখন কনভেনশনাল যে আমাদের চেকস এন্ড ব্যালেন্সেস আছে in the liberal democracy, the three organs of the state checking it balance. We have seen in the case of Bangladesh and many other countries too. This range is the question here. Bangladesh extreme chole geche. These were a lot blatantly captured, not even subtly or indirectly. It was blatantly captured every institutions of accountability of the three organs of checks and balances. So Bangladesh, আমি 100% guarantee দিয়ে বলতে পারি any future regime will do the same. Okay? এখন how do we protect this? হ্যাঁ, সেখানে আমি বলছি, সাজেস্ট করছি যে we need to have dual power. So dual power বলতে আমি মিন করছি যে সোসাইটাল একটা পাওয়ার থাকবে with constitutional endorsement, which will create additional sets of from the society's side checks and balance mechanism. Okay, with veto power, with real legal mandate, constitutional mandate. I'm thinking of a very complex checks and balance system beyond the liberal traditional checks and balance. So society will have their independent institution to check and monitor, and if necessary, with the veto power, to engage with the state power. Hybrid থাকতে পারে, হাইব্রিডের কথা বলা হচ্ছে, where you have both state actors and societal actors together deliberating. Commissioner কথা বলা হচ্ছে, কিন্তু beyond that we need to develop something where society can effectively, on a collective basis, can monitor and check the state actor. এটা একটা করতে হবে, এটা বাংলাদেশের কনটেক্সটে হয়নি, but we need to imagine, we need to rewrite parts of our constitution, so we have that. But which is a dual power essentially.
Okay, but now we have.
And it's a dispersal of power, isn't it? I think this is
dispersal of power.
The definition of madness is keeping on doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
Right.
So to some extent, I feel we've gone a little bit mad and thinking that if we don't do something different to what we did in 2007-8, which was a much easier situation than the current situation, then I think that we will recreate the same basis for authoritarianism with just a different face at the top. I feel quite confident to say that. So I completely agree with Mirza Bhai that this requires a real reinvigoration of democracy at the very local, at the multiple levels. Democracy is not about having multi-party elections. It is
No.
not. That's one part
Absolutely.
of it. It's a very important part of it. It's not democracy. So democracy is many, many things. There are many, many definitions. There are many meanings, many traditions, and many examples we can draw on. And I think that this idea of dispersing power into many institutions with citizens, and we have quite a rich tradition, very repressed in the last 10 years, but a rich tradition of social organization. In an earlier time, we would have called that civil society, but that's a dirty word in Bangladesh now. We don't say that anymore. Social organization, rich tradition of social organization, clubs, youth clubs. We have mosque committees, we have bazaar committees, we have women's groups, we have NGOs, we have all of it. We can use those people, those groups exist. This is a kind of social capital, which is really very much present and actually has been working throughout this authoritarian period at the local level, keeping things running, keeping a relationship between citizen and state going. So it's there. However, and this is a big however, what are the guarantees that these citizens don't just, or these committees and these multiple institutions that are there to act as checks and balances, what is the guarantee that they are not just captured by whoever is the ruling party?
Yeah.
There we have to really think about what can be done, how citizen power can be independently harnessed without being co-opted by parties. I think that's a big challenge. But there are examples from around the world. There's a lot of innovation going on in democracy that I think we can draw on. We're this is the country of innovation and resilience, of course, but innovation in particular, institutional innovation is what we do best. Here we are on the front lines of climate change and global economic collapse, and so that's what we do. We innovate. So let's innovate. Democracy is hard.
Yeah.
Let's come up with new ways of doing it.
Absolutely. Tariq?
So I agree completely with the idea of making permanent, institutionalizing people power. I think both Naomi and Mirza will have much better ideas about how this works as political scientists who have been thinking about these questions much longer than I have. I do have a different kind of the scope. I think it's worth, as we kind of express our dreams, remembering the scope of the challenge. And it's worth remembering that along with the collapse of Hasina, every single state institution collapsed.
Yes.
And so I think the title was Fixing the Ship in Midst Troubled Waters. So we're actually, I think that's a very good way of thinking about it. But I kind of want to, I'm a historian, I don't study things that are relevant to anyone. But I am working on the idea of, on the post-47 East Pakistan moment. And what I see in that moment, in 47, is that people who are building a new state are building it out of the ruins of the British Empire. And they're building it out of institutions, bureaucrats, laws that had been working and built for 150 years. So even if they try and achieve a new vision, the raw materials through which they try to achieve that vision are colonial. And hence we ended up with a state that was quite colonial. The post-colonial state reproduced the colonial things, because what else were you going to do? You have to work with what you have. And I feel like we're in a similar situation here, where we have to work with what we have. We can't just build a new, we saw what de-Baathification did in Iraq. Right. We don't want to do that here, surely.
But Tariq, these institutions that Mirza is talking about, the provision exists. And in fact, I think many of the provisions were laid down in the previous caretaker government and in fact adopted by the Awami League at the local level, at least.
But I feel like maybe I'm not the one who needs to.
I think Naomi, if I'm not mistaken, apni kind of Upajila Porishad Acted under by Union Porishad Acted under the social standing committee, but
but all of the citizens charter, all of the accountability.
But I feel like what exists in laws and what exists in an existing institution with existing members and existing ways of working are not the same. The laws are, we have to make material what's in the law, right? And we do have a material inheritance as well.
Breathe life into it. Yeah.
But we already have living remnants of the past regime, right? The corrupt people, the corrupted institutions, the corrupted practices haven't gone away with Prime Minister's resignation. They're still there.
Yeah.
And those are the raw materials out of which, those are the people, the buildings,
That's for
and
sure.
the practices out of which we're going to build this new state. So I think there is something there that's tricky. I mean, I want the solution that both of you offer is that's perfect. I want that.
What went there যেগুলো ছিল না তার মধ্যে হচ্ছে যে তোমার referendum is one, and then in the society too তোমার hybrid ছিল, but not pure societal based institution for monitoring. Okay, ওইটা ছিল না, ওইটা আমাদেরকে রিইমাজিন করতে হচ্ছে, নতুন ভাবে চিন্তা করতে হচ্ছে।
একটু যদি এখানে এসে করি, মানে ডু ইউ থিংক ফর ইনস্ট্যান্স আমাদের দুর্নীতি দমন কমিশন যেটা ছিল বা তথ্য কমিশন যেটা ছিল, মানে এগুলো একটা বড় সমস্যা ছিল, এক সিটিজেনের কাছ থেকে এদের কানেকশনের বা কোনো ধরনের ব্রিজ এখানে ছিল না, অল্প কিছু প্রসিডিউর ছাড়া। আর দুই হচ্ছে গিয়ে এদেরও যে হচ্ছে গিয়ে সংসদ বা যে কোনো কিছুর কাছে জবাবদিহিতা বা এটা কি করছে, কতখানি সাকসেসফুলি করতে পারছে, সেটারও কোনো ধরনের ইস্যু ছিল না। রাইট, সিটিজেনের সাথে যদি এই কানেক্টিভিটিটা এস্টাবলিশ করা হয়, উইল দ্যাট ক্রিয়েট সাম সর্ট অফ
দ্যাট উইল হেল্প, যেটাকে আমি মাল্টিপল ভিটো বলছি, কমপ্লেক্স ভিটো, কমপ্লেক্স চেকস এন্ড ব্যালেন্সের কথা বলছি। হ্যাঁ, এগুলো একটু অ্যাবস্ট্রাকশন আছে, কিন্তু ওই যে এক্স্যাক্টলি যেটা এখন বলা হচ্ছে সেটাই, যে আমরা ধরে নিলাম তথ্য কমিশন, ইনফরমেশন কমিশন, আমরা ধরে নিলাম অ্যান্টি কারাপশন কমিশন, এটা ছিল ওই কনভেনশনাল লিবারাল ডেমোক্রেসির ওই কনভেনশনাল চেকস এন্ড ব্যালেন্সের ভেতরে। সিটিজেন, বাইরের সিটিজেন, তার ওটার উপর ভিটো দেওয়া, তার ওটাকে মনিটর করার কোন প্রভিশন ছিল না। মিডিয়া ছিল, বাট মিডিয়া ক্যান বি ইগনোরড অর ক্যান বি ক্যাপচার্ড ইভেন্চুয়ালি। মানে বাংলাদেশ হ্যাজ শোন that state or political elite can go to the extreme, to the totalitarian system almost. ওখান থেকে আমাদেরকে এই totalitarian, almost near totalitarianism, যেটা finally the Sheikh Hasina government installed or developed, ওখান থেকে আমাদেরকে ব্যাকট্র্যাক করতে হলে নিউ সোসাইটাল পাওয়ার, যেটা বাংলাদেশের হিস্ট্রি নেই। হ্যাঁ, নিয়মি যেগুলো বলছে যে আমাদের স্মল ক্লাব যেটা সেটা ছিল, সেগুলো কিন্তু ওভার দ্য লাস্ট several decades decimate করে দেওয়া হয়েছে। হ্যাঁ, এখন আছে maybe it may be in latent form, maybe in aspirations.
I will say this, I think these committees actually did play important roles, if not in the movement directly, but during the movement, in terms of keeping communities going, through curfew, internet blackouts, through post-government collapse.
In the urban
those very groups that Naomi mentioned.
And remember, we saw them in COVID as well, right? And after COVID. One of the reasons I'm saying all of this is that I was studying in a very small way youth-led civil society organizations, a new kind, not the development NGOs, but a new kind of quite small scale, but numerous youth initiatives. This was the energy, the appetite, the desire to do something remains there, to organize, to help, to do something for the nation. This is still there. This has always been there. It's always there. But we know from the literature, from the theory, we know that civil society or social organization or social capital, whatever you want to call it, it really depends on how much space the state gives it, the government gives it, how much support, in fact, they get. We think of them as very independent, but they need help. They need help. They need to know that they can do, that they can organize, that they can participate, that they can speak, that they can raise funds, they can have meetings. They know that now, or maybe they're getting to know that now. But the other thing is, and I shared this with Mirza and with you, Shahan, we've looked at this literature from around the world. We've done these case studies, this research about how do you really shift power? How do you really shift power where power needs to be shifted in particular circumstances? And one of the lessons is that actually what you need is the state, the government, to come in with material support. It's not just about saying, yes, you can organize, you can have your meetings, you can give your perspectives. Not just that, but actual material support to reduce the risks and the costs of collective action. And when you have that, we've seen this in Brazil, we've seen this in many places. In India, we've seen it quite a lot. When you have that, then really you do get some dispersal of power. It's very difficult. It's all difficult. Democracy is hard.
These are all different.
Yeah.
It's very contextual, very cultural, very historical.
But it must come from the society, from the political culture, and it can come. But the state has to create space. Now we have an interim government that can create space, that can reduce the risks and costs of collective action.
So, Naomi, my question, I guess, is: we've all our lives, I've heard both of you speak of weak state, strong society.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it seems that we're now saying strong state,
Society.
weak society. At this point in time, as we're speaking, to me, I'm hearing the state has to create a social space.
Right.
Whereas it seems to me, in previous work, we've said society has claimed space or held on to space, or state is unable to do stuff society won't let it do. Does not increase
I'm
already.
sure Mirza will have a view on this. My view on this is that it remains a weak state and a strong society in Bangladesh, but it's a much stronger state, at least it was under Sheikh Hasina, than it had ever been. And society had been weakened more than it had ever been under Sheikh Hasina. At least organized social action groups that were not affiliated to the Awami League. The others maybe is a different story. But nevertheless, I think it still remains a relatively weak state in a strong society.
I think I will agree with that. Mirza, if you remember that when we were doing our shrinking civic space study, one of the things that we found that even in the rural areas, right, the local organizations that we are talking about, they were captured by the political party. So it's kind of penetration of the state or state party to that particular place. So and capturing those organizations, those institutions, disallowing space for the other civil society or rights-based organizations.
You see, when we talk about strong society and weak state, it's not the organized civil society which are strong. Okay, they can be captured. They have been captured over the years. Okay, but we are talking about like the government of Bangladesh could never got rid of dowry or child marriage.
Best example.
There you see the strength of the state. Which China
society
can do like this. Okay, and also vis-a-vis with the poor people's organized activism or civil society acting on behalf of the poor. Those are controlled, manipulated, and whatever. But the strongest one, like the business elites, civil society, okay, they couldn't, or the transport owners, civil society groups, they were, in fact, the state was beholden to them. It's the other way around. So it was a capture state at the same time. Okay, so that's why it's a weak state.
So if I understand this, the state cannot make Bangladeshis do what they're not already willing to do. This is how I understand weak state, strong society. How does this influence our attempts to realize this post? Because now we're dealing with, we have this dream. We want a post-revolutionary future, which is going to be democratic. And we have a weak state which cannot impose itself on a strong society through which we wish to achieve this dream. How does that play out?
One thing that we are now trying to visualize, probably, and I'm just thinking loud here, is we are talking about a balance now. Balance between the state and society, essentially. But if you press me, I'll be on the side of the society in Bangladesh for the time being, given the nature of the state that we have. The society has some upper hand, doing good things, of course, constitutionally endorsed, having the mandated, not in an unruly way, not mobocracy, but in a very organized way through legal support, through constitutional support, putting constant pressure on the state to do for the greatest welfare of the society.
No, but
That's how we can.
How do you draw that fine line? Because
Between?
you're talking about the mob, the role of the mob, kind of the mobocracy and everything that is going on. So how do you draw that fine line that it will remain within this boundary or not necessarily cross the boundary and kind of become the mob justice or mob lynching that we are seeing? Because there is not
This-
necessarily a line that you can
I know,
draw,
but
right?
this is an exceptional time. We are in a post-revolutionary situation. These are expected.
Okay.
Okay, it's trying to rebuild the ship in a turbulent sea. But the thing is, Constitution will give you the rules of the game that we have to follow, and that Constitution has to be accepted by almost everyone.
Why would society accept? What's its incentive?
Do we also think that? I wonder what you think. Do we also think that this revolutionary moment, this uprising, I think is the appropriate term. Has it changed the political culture? Has it given new confidence to people to organize? Think of a whole generation under 25 who never voted or not properly, who never really considered politics to be something they could go into in any sense, whether as a professional politician or in terms of organizing, mobilizing. Do we think that's changed? How is that being captured or institutionalized or strengthened or mainstreamed? Has political culture changed?
So I don't know. It's too early. I feel it's too early to manifest, and it's too raw. It's in the process. Whatever's happening is happening. So we don't know what's happening. But I'll say this: I don't know about the rest of us. I don't know about the general Janata, but the students who participated are certainly transformed at an individual level. They're not the same people who began this movement. We're talking about tens of thousands of students.
I think Gen Z as a whole.
Gen Z, an entire generation is transformed. I think that's without a doubt.
Also,
and just to continue I forget again. Go on.
So also the working class, also the profession. Everyone is demanding now.
But everyone is It's hard to tell. So this is where Shahan Bhai's question comes back. Yeah. When we talk about these demands now, how do you differentiate between people who have been transformed by the movement and people who are being opportunistic? How do you differentiate the mobocracy, the mob, and the people, the new people, the new Bangladeshi 2.0? What I don't know if you can. There's no definition.
There's a part of us is a mob, and part of us is a
every crowd is a mob. Every crowd is a mob, and the people at the same time.
Also, a mob is very much in the eye of the beholder, isn't it?
It's entirely in the eye of the beholder.
But eventually, I think, as I said, it's a post-revolutionary situation. I think things will get settled down. There will be, of course, some steering, some cajoling, whatever that the government is trying. There probably at one point they will have to have some cohesion when people will go to the extreme. Okay, so some kind of
extremes.
Huh?
There have been extremes already.
There have been some extremes. Yes. Students.
But you know who they're going to coerce, though. You know what the coercive is going to come down on? The garments workers.
Yeah.
If you had to pick who they're going to end up. It won't be
the Islamists. It won't be the people who beat up that kid for saying stupid things about the Prophet, right? It won't be those people.
It'll be the garments workers. It'll be the garments
workers.
Yeah. So hopefully we don't have to go to that extreme. This kind of upsurge of demands and unruly hypocrisy. Hopefully people will settle down. But if it doesn't, then some degree of cohesion will come in eventually, which we don't like. We don't like that.
It's not the
but
question
it will.
of liking. It's a question of capacity.
The capacity to coerce.
Sure that whether
okay.
the state has the capacity to even do that, considering how the police force is, right now panicking with everything. Right. Yeah.
And think about Mirza Bhai. Last time the caretaker government was under emergency powers, right?
And they were removed by a movement.
Special Powers Act, and there's none of that now, right?
No. That time is completely different. It was essentially de facto army rule. This time it isn't. Okay. It's a police-centric governance now, the multiple actors and so on. But as political theory suggests, at one point there has to be some kind of equilibrium, and we hope that equilibrium will be friendly to all, but it might not. So time will tell.
Probably, I don't know how much time we have, but students' participation in politics, we have talked about that. The student আসলেই কোনো political party form করার চেষ্টা করে, will that change the equilibrium? Will that sort of
করছে কিন্তু
huh?
আসলে করছে
Well, there are latent demands, there are hints, but not very explicit. Where
I
they are
hope
being
they
very
do.
diplomatic.
I hope they do, but I hope they do.
We need more parties, of
We
course.
need a
hope they do.
progressive alternative
Yeah,
যেটা
I
নাই
don't know.
বর্তমান
I
নাই
mean, I think Gen Z understands the word progressive differently from our generation. I think they consider themselves progressive, but I think they have a different. I mean, I think in many ways the political parties and the politics of the future is going to be things which alienate older people. It's going to be carried out in terms which they don't find. I mean, I suspect, and I'm fine with that. I actually support it. I hope the elderly get progressively marginalized faster, including myself in that. But I think they're forming a party. They're really smart about it, right? If they start talking about the party now, it's going to cause all the infighting that you can imagine. I mean, I think they're being strategic. I think they're being clever. And I think we have every reason to keep faith in them, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Naomi,
they've done nothing yet, which destroys my faith in them as a force for a better future.
Right.
Everything they've done so far has reinforced my faith in them as a force for a better future.
Right. And Naomi, there is an initiative now which has started. The student movement, the Boishamo Birodhi student movement, they have started this the establishment of a alternative civil society. They call it Nagorik Committee, Nagorik committees, and so on. They will have committees all throughout the geographical entities, the top and the lowest level. They're in the process of developing it, which they call as a permanent pressure group. Okay.
Where is your power dispersal?
Yeah, the dispersal. Dispersion. What do you call this? Dispersal. Okay. And hopefully that will, consolidate. That will get constitutional legitimacy. It will be rule bound, and this will act as a societal, one form of societal dual power, societal power. Hopefully. And we'll have to wait and see how that evolves over time. I think this is something very welcome. I mean, we should welcome it.
I agree. It's yeah. We can't have everything decided by posh people sitting in Dhaka.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Just the intelligence.
The nice thing is the posh.
No, we don't have to. I think we have reached some kind of.
But Naomi, I'll just add: the posh people in Dhaka are right now powerless. And they're panicky. They're panicky. They don't like any of it. Even if they could be pro-Awami League, they could be anti-Awami League, they could be Islamist, they could be not Islamist. They're not liking this present world where they don't know where these people went to school, who their fathers are, whose uncle went to wherever. They have no idea. And I'm personally loving it.
এবং আরেকটা জিনিস যেটা হচ্ছে যে ওই যে বৈষম্যবিরোধী ছাত্র আন্দোলন থেকে যে এখন যে প্রত্যেকটা জেলায় জেলায় যে সফর যেটা শুরু হয়েছে, দে আর মিটিং উইথ দ্য স্টুডেন্টস, দে আর মিটিং উইথ দ্য ফ্যামিলিজ যারা মারা গেছে তাদের ফ্যামিলির সাথে। Yes, there are some challenges there, but that actually indicate that there is probably some planning or something,
and they're serious about it.
Yeah, they're serious.
They are very serious about it. I mean, these students leaders are very serious about their country, which is such a good thing.
I agree. It's a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. And that really is where we have to place our hope.
Yes.
Our trust.
I have never felt this hopeful about our country.
Really?
Yes.
But never. Like, I can safely say this. I mean, it's the bad times that probably go badly, but I've never felt this hopeful. It's probably going to end badly. But
let's not end this conversation on that note.
But I'm still very hopeful.
Please say something nice.
I mean, we've all been through this before. You've said so. We'll go back to where it was, right? Most likely, we end up to where we were.
There's nothing inevitable about history. Okay,
you have to look at these
create history.
Cycles.
That's why I'm hopeful.
Yeah, we create history.
No, that's why I'm hopeful. That's why I'm hopeful. No, I'm hopeful. I think that the uncertainty makes me hopeful. Because the certainty, it seems to me, the certainty was more of the same. Certainty was always meant that things will keep going the way they have been going. And for the first time, I see that there could be
Exactly.
something different.
Yeah, well, I'm not thrilled about the prospect of a Jamaat government, to be honest with you. Anyway,
I mean, it's just different.
no, it's all right for you.
I don't know. I mean, we'll find out. I mean, haircuts and shorts. Who knows what
I'm
gets
looking
my way?
forward to your beard.
I can't even grow a proper beard.
Right. So anyway, I think we are reaching diminishing marginal utility. We'll talk about the same thing again. So I think it's time to stop. এগুলো আবার edit করে দিও আমার কথা। So I think we should stop. To me, last words, ending words.
I don't know. আমি ending করে কিছু এখানেই শেষ করে দেব। So let's stay hopeful. That's it.
Yeah. Naomi, any ending words from you?
No, I think that there are loads of really good ideas out there. If someone has the capacity to turn them into, laws and action, then that's great. So let's hope Tariq is right.
Right. The Democracy Day today বলবা কিছু? না আমি তো খুব ভালো জানি না ডেমোক্রেসি ডে সম্পর্কে। Well, the Democracy Day, of course, is to celebrate democracy. I'm sure globally. So, unlike many other countries, we are in the midst of a completely different trajectory. আমাদের জন্য ডেমোক্রেসি নিয়ে ভাবা, ডেমোক্রেসি ইমাজিন করা, রিইমাজিন করা, আমাদের মতো করে ইনভেন্ট করা, to cope with the uncertainty. It's very precious and it's extremely important. আমার জানার মতে 71 সালের পরে 1971 এর পরে এত ক্রিটিক্যাল টাইম দিয়ে আমরা কখনো গেছি। So let's see if we can control the history rather than history controlling us.